among other things. How are they adapting? And will your drinking habits change? I'm Dan Burwood, in for Michelle Elliott. Welcome to a Friday edition of BC Today. Thanks for joining us on radio, TV, and live stream. You can call us now on our top story. Are you changing your food habits as tariffs affect what you can buy at grocery stores? What substitutions are you making, if anything? Give us a call now. Our number is 604-669-3733 in Metro Vancouver. Across our great big beautiful province, it's 1-800-825-5950 or hit pound 690 or email us bctoday@cbc.ca. Before we get to our top story, we have an update just ahead of the federal election. The federal government is giving TransLink a financial boost for public transit projects here in Metro Vancouver. The agency will receive $1.5 billion over 10 years, starting next year. This comes ahead of that federal election call expected this weekend. Energy Minister Jonathan Wilkinson, BC's only representative in Mark Carney's cabinet, made that announcement in downtown Vancouver a short time ago.
This funding enables new dedicated bus lines, transit expansion, and supports maintenance. These agreements also ensure that investments are underpinned by strategic planning, like the need for more housing and more affordable housing near transit hubs. And they provide long-term clarity for TransLink to plan for the needs of today and of tomorrow. The funding will play a key role in supporting new capital projects in TransLink's Access for Everyone plan, including the first 3 bus rapid transit routes on King George Boulevard in Surrey, connecting Langley to Maple Ridge, and the North Shore to Metrotown in Burnaby. This funding will help TransLink deliver on long-term projects that are vital to people who commute downtown from across the Lower Mainland.
Energy Minister Jonathan Wilkinson. The Sea to Sky corridor will also get a transit investment of $189 million. Meanwhile, BC leaders in Canada's border communities say they urgently need help from the federal government to weather the impacts of the tariff threats. Several mayors of border cities and towns gathered today pleading for help. They were joined by Cam Bissonnette, a duty-free operator in a Soyuz in the Okanagan, who's grappling with a very uncertain future for his business.
Of course, I've had to fund the business myself out of my personal savings to keep the lights on. Sorry about that. Pay taxes, all the things that come with running a small business. Didn't expect this. Sorry about that.
There's nothing to be sorry about.
But anyway, living in Osoyoos, and I've even had to make a career change. I'm now living in Kelowna. Started a career in real estate finance because I could see the writing on the wall. Have really good people that work for me, taking care of it for me while I do other things. I haven't collected a paycheck from my business since June of last year. Now it's getting to the point where I'm wondering how much longer can I pay my staff? We just did a survey within our association. 25 to 30% of the people are wondering if they're going to be here in 6 months. I was asked a question, how long do you think your business can remain solvent? And that was a punch to the gut because I really had to think about it. It's the first time I thought, am I going to be here? How long will I be here for?
That was Cam Bissonnette, a duty-free operator in a Soyuz, grappling with the uncertain future of his business. You can hear it in his voice. He joined several mayors of border cities and towns across the country, pleading for federal help as they feel the bite of the impact of tariffs. Food banks in BC are also bracing for a surge in demand, with looming U.S. tariffs expected to drive up the cost of food at grocery stores. Well, the economic impact of the ongoing trade war could mean more pressure on food banks. Some are reporting a windfall in extra donations of a very specific kind. Here's Janella Hamilton with that story.
As food banks across the province continue to grapple with growing demand, there's heightened concern U.S. tariffs will lead to higher food costs, impacting BC households already struggling to make ends meet.
Those little increases are not that little on those budgets. You know, it means the difference between, am I going to buy yogurt and cheese, or am I just going to buy cheese?
She worries the looming tariffs could mean more people will face food insecurity. But there is a silver lining amid the ongoing trade war. This Nanaimo Food Bank says it's been getting an unexpected boost in donations of U.S.-made products from grocery stores that are unable to sell them.
It's everything. So we're seeing mushrooms, cucumbers, peppers, kiwis, lots of oranges, lots of stuff coming from California.
The organization estimates about 300 to 400 kilograms more of American produce has come in each day compared to before. The boom lasted for about 5 weeks before trailing off. The executive director believes it could be because some grocers are reducing their orders for American products.
Supply chains are very tight, and as consumers change their decisions, which they clearly have done with this tariff war, we weren't surprised at all to start seeing more American produce.
While this does benefit some food banks in the short term, the longer term outlook is still very concerning. The food banks will see their budgets for purchasing needing to be stretched even further.
Like here at the Surrey Food Bank, which is working with other food banks in the city to mitigate the potential impact.
If an organization is giving to one of us in terms of donated food, they're actually giving to all 4 of us, and we're sharing it on the back end.
And while the tariffs come with a lot of uncertainty, she remains hopeful the community will step up. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
So we are asking you, are tariffs changing your shopping habits at the grocery store? Are you looking for substitutions? What changes do you want to see in the grocery aisles? Call us 1-800-825-5950. In Metro Vancouver, the number is 604-669-3733. Pound 690 on your cell phone. Please be hands-free or pulled over if you're driving. Email us bctoday@cbc.ca. One of the voices you heard in that story is Dan Huang Taylor, the Executive Director of Food Banks BC, and he joins us now. Dan, thanks for being here. First, are you noticing an increase in demand at food banks that you can link to tariffs?
We've been seeing a steady increase in demand for services for a number of years now. I wouldn't say we could categorically state there's been a direct increase as a result of the tariffs. We know that the continued increases in costs of goods at grocery stores is one of the leading reasons that people are turning to food banks. And we anticipate that as prices do start to increase, primarily as a result of these tariffs, more and more people are going to be turning to food banks.
Remind us, how many people are you helping right now?
Well, across the network of our membership, which is comprised of 110 food banks throughout the province, we're seeing on average over 100,000 unique visitors to food banks every single month. Now, those food banks, that network, are serving hundreds of other community agencies who themselves are serving their own clients and supporting hunger relief efforts across the province. So the 100,000 plus who are visiting food banks represent probably somewhere between maybe a third of the overall number of people who are actually regularly needing to access these services. So it's a very, very difficult situation out there, and it's only getting worse.
Are tariffs part of the conversation when you chat with people who are coming in? I think you call them clients who are coming to you for help?
Well, I mean, Food Banks BC isn't. We don't directly work with on the front lines of food banks. We support our members. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be at all surprised if that starts to become a common part of the conversation. What brought you to needing these services? As I mentioned, the top 3 reasons are food prices, housing costs, and low wages. And we've seen this kind of increasing number of people citing the cost of goods at grocery stores, at the groceries. So this is clearly going to be another challenge that food banks have to deal with. We do anticipate that more and more people are going to be coming to their services because as the person that was interviewed, you're weighing up the options of what you can buy, having to forego some essential staples and those pantry items that you need to feed your family. The food banks are there, unfortunately, but for just that reason, to supplement what people can't afford to buy.
We're asking our listeners and viewers today, are tariffs changing your shopping habits at the grocery store? Are you looking for substitutions? What changes do you want to see in the aisles? Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950. Our number in Metro Vancouver is 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email us as well, bctoday@cbc.ca. Dan, as we heard in Janella's story, one Nanaimo food bank says it's been getting an unexpected boost in donations because of American-made products from grocery stores that are not selling right now. Are you seeing or hearing about that at other food banks?
This is a recent development, and as it was noted, it was I think a windfall and a bit of a silver lining, but that would be a very sort of temporary situation. I certainly know that the Canadian purchasing habits and boycotting of US products. I personally made decisions more carefully at the grocery store, and we've seen certain products at the grocery store from the US being offered at lower prices. It doesn't surprise me that we are seeing this glut in US produce being made available to food banks. So it's something that we could consider a positive consequence of these actions, but it's so short term. We know that there are going to be adjustments, and that those products are going to be less available, and then therefore we won't see this surplus in the long term. We'll only see these probably increased costs of goods, and when the tariffs really do bite, that's going to be a very difficult situation for many households in BC.
You've talked before when we do our Food Bank Day specials, and you join us, about using your buying power to get certain foods for people. How are tariffs, or do you expect them to impact that, and how?
Well, the budgets of food banks, Food Banks BC, we purchase food as well for on behalf of our members. Those will be stretched further, and the relationships that we might have with various food producers, vendors here in BC and across Canada does allow for us to purchase at scale and drive some of those costs down. But those savings are going to be shrinking. The margins that BC's growers, BC's producers are operating with will be tighter. There's the loss of the US market for many of the folks working in the agri-food sector will be an extremely sort of hard time to navigate through. And so, we know that purchasing is going to be always required. There's not enough food that comes through from donations, and a large amount of food is purchased by food banks in BC. It's encouraging to hear about the things that are happening in places like Surrey, where different agencies are coming together to sort of leverage their strengths and share resources, and we probably need to see more of that. And we've been identifying ways that we can work more with BC growers and producers to identify opportunities to support that sector, but also supporting the food banks and the people that need the services.
Let's go to Greywall in Nanaimo. Greywall, thanks very much for calling in. Are your shopping habits changing?
No, because I'd like to share. I grew up with a family of 10 kids. I don't waste food. 60% of food is wasted. I hear it over and over again. And just because something is best do doesn't mean it's bad, And the other thing I like to share, I get half-price sandwiches, soups, and pastries up in Ladysmith at a wonderful cafe. And I take a lot of that to the food bank, right? And I have more food than I can use myself. I like to buy it for myself so I don't have to pay the big price out. And the other thing I like to share is I really love the word war to be taken out of this conversation. I believe it's responsible for all the havoc, trashing of this and trashing of that, people fueling people's anger. I would like it taken totally out of the discussion. It's absolutely negative.
Graywell, if I can ask you, what word would you put in there to perhaps better describe what's happening right now?
How about discussions?
What if people are not feeling the bite of that? I don't know if you had a chance to hear Cam Bissonette. He's running a business, a duty-free shop, and he was in tears talking about the fact that his business may have to close. He may have to lay off staff. He might not be able to pay them.
I was just watching that.
Yeah.
I was just watching that, sir.
Yeah. And so what do you make of it?
There's a lot of devastation about this, and this nonsense going on. This war is devastating people in Canada. You know, we're trying to hurt the United States, and we're hurting our own people.
What about the argument that the U.S. president is targeting Canada?
Well, look, I policed for 30 years, and I policed by talking to people. I never hurt anybody, and I never shot anybody. I used my voice.
We appreciate your call and your service, Graywell. Thank you very much. We appreciate your perspective. I want to get to some emails now. Randy writes us around shopping habits. Shop indie Canadian and avoid the large American grocery retailers. And Scott says food costs in BC are high, and we're making it worse. Internal barriers like supply management and quotas stop new farmers and food producers from entering the market, making it easier to import than produce locally. That's backwards. And craft breweries and wineries face layers of taxes, even on-site sales. And we've removed those, the cost of beer or wine could drop. We're going to deal with that in the second half of our show. We appreciate the call. Dan Huang-Taylor is with us, the Executive Director of Food Banks BC. Dan, what do you make of what you heard from Graywell? Clearly some feelings around the tension points there, but also some of the steps that he's taking to save money, and certainly coming from a family of 10, he's probably used to not getting everything on the table that perhaps he'd like.
Well, I mean, there's certainly a lot of truth to the amount of food that's wasted. We do lose a huge amount of perfectly edible product at different levels of the supply chain, from the farm to retailers and consumers, and we do need to do a much better job at reducing that waste, moving more of that food into the charitable food sector, and sort of just creating a structure that allows us to ensure that we can access this food that could, essentially, feed just the many of the people who are experiencing food insecurity and hunger. So that there's a real concerted effort to try to work towards waste reduction and all of the other benefits of that as well from an environmental standpoint. But we cannot stand by and see kids going to school hungry while we have so much waste in this system.
Dan, what is the holdup, if anything, around diverting more food that may go to the landfill to food banks and to those who need it? Where's the pinch? What is the pinch point?
We don't really have the infrastructure in place to be able to receive the volume of food that's coming in. We need facilities that can take that amount of food on to take care of the necessary processing and storage and then the distribution. This is something that we is talked about a lot, but we really need to see investment in this to move towards a system where we can recover this food. There are some, and these were just mentioned as well in one of the callers, or I think an email. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of regulations that prevent us from being able to access food, and there are these, it's so frustrating, but obviously. There are certain products that, because of the size, the shape, the color, they never make it to the stores, and those will be maybe just plowed back into the earth or disposed of. And we know that there is this nutritional quality food out there that could be accessed if we could just find some ways to overcome some of these logistical challenges and some of the regulatory challenges as well.
Let's go to the calls now. Heidi is joining us from Surrey. Heidi, are you changing your shopping habits? What's your situation? Hello, Heidi, you're on.
Hi, this is Kim in Fort St. James.
My apologies, Kim. We're going to get to Heidi in just a moment. Kim, go ahead. What's your situation?
Well, we moved to northern BC 4 years ago, and of course, being in a smaller community, we noticed the rising costs a little bit more than when we moved from the Lower Mainland. So we have taken up to build a garden space and buy packages of seeds, which are anywhere between $2.99 and $3.99, and we can pretty much grow our entire summer and our fruit and our vegetables in the fall and live off of that throughout the whole winter and redo it all again in spring.
How much money do you think that saves you, Kim?
Oh, hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I mean, you go here in Fort St. James at Save On and a package of a 3 kilogram bag of carrots is about $8. Package of carrot seeds that gives you 100 plus carrots is $3.99. So we are saving hundreds of dollars just on vegetables alone.
Kim, we're just heading into about to head into a break. If I could get one more question into you, what would you say to people who may not have the room, the space, the green space in order to grow their own?
Well, even little garden boxes. You can grow quite a few tomatoes on one plant, and even $20-50 worth of tomatoes over a month of picking them. Tomato plants grow quite a bit. So you can just do little garden boxes, or community gardens is another option.
Kim, we appreciate the call. Thanks very much. Dan, we're just about out of time. Any closing thoughts on where you think this might go?
I love that last caller's comments about community gardens and growing your own if you're able to do so. But this is something that we do need to look at in partnership with government at all levels, really, to the investment in local and sustainable food access points. Community gardens are a great example of that, allowing people to have agency over their food, but also to not be reliant on a very vulnerable food chain and supply chain. We're seeing the consequences of not really investing in this sooner. So the conversations continue. We're bracing ourselves for some very tricky times, and we just appreciate the coverage of this and the support that we receive for this work.
Okay. Dan Huang Taylor, Executive Director of Food Banks BC, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me on today.
It is coming up to 12:29. This is BC Today. We're going to jump to some of your emails about federal election priorities, and many of you emailed in. We appreciate that. Jade said, for this federal election, I'm very excited to observe the new co-leadership model of the Green Party. Jonathan Pedneau and Elizabeth May and the Greens have been the only party with a clear, concise plan that addresses the climate and each ecological emergency at the scale required. I hope voters are strategic, however. I would like to see more Greens elected where possible. We cannot forget about climate change. Stu says, in part, my biggest priority in the next election is opportunities for Canadians, particularly for youth. I'm disheartened every time I hear that the solution to the doctor shortage is immigration. These are fantastic jobs for our youth, and we are a wealthy country that should be able to offer training spots to our own youth, yet we train far less doctors than many other countries. And lastly, Jason says, why do we have to have political system based on competition with other parties when we will start working together to solve issues rather than fighting and arguing? We appreciate your emails. We'll get to a few of them in around cost of living after the break. And coming up is this news break with Robert Zimmerman. Sorry about that. You're listening to BC Today on CBC Radio 1. We are on television. We are on YouTube as well. Coming up after our news update, we're going to be sticking with tariffs and seeing what the impact is on our craft brewing situation in BC amid these cost of living pressures and whatnot, notably on the craft beer industry, especially around aluminum, how you get your beverage. What does it mean for your favorite beverages? That's after this news update with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. The federal government has committed $1.5 billion over 10 years for transit here in the Lower Mainland. The funding for TransLink is in addition to a previous commitment of more than $660 million. CEO Kevin Quinn has previously said TransLink is facing an annual operational shortfall of $600 million. Canada's premiers are meeting with Prime Minister Mark Carney this afternoon. They are discussing the ongoing impact of U.S. tariffs and what can be done to address interprovincial trade barriers. Carney is expected to dissolve Parliament and call an election on Sunday. And a man has been arrested here in Vancouver after the Kitsilano Tesla dealership was vandalized with spray-painted obscenities. A 27-year-old man was taken into custody and is scheduled to appear in court in May. Vancouver police say there have been 8 confirmed acts of mischief aimed at Tesla since January 1st. Investigators believe they are in response to political actions of CEO Elon Musk. And now the forecast. Snowfall warnings continue for sections of Highway 3 and the Coquihalla. On the north coast, a chance of showers this afternoon with a high of 8. Highs around 7 and cloudy in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, a chance of showers and thunderstorms with a high of 8 degrees. Highs up to 8 with showers in the Kootenays this afternoon. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, a mix of sun and cloud with a high of 10. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, showers this afternoon. We may also see some thunderstorms with highs around 9. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zimmerman. You're listening to BC Today on CBC Radio 1, watching on YouTube and on CBC Television and streaming. Check out cbc.ca/BC. Lots more on the day's top stories on the afternoon shows in your region. We heard from Federal Energy Minister Jonathan Wilkinson earlier, but he's also checking in on the coast this afternoon. Here's Gloria to give us a bit more.
Dan, hi there. It's Gloria Makurenko here, and I'd love it if you could join us this afternoon on the Coast. We're going to be speaking with Jonathan Wilkinson. He is currently BC's only federal cabinet minister right now, so we'll have a conversation with him just before Mark Carney is expected to call an election this weekend. It's Friday, so our pop culture columnist, Rad Simon Pillay, will join us with some recommendations to get you ready for your weekend viewing, and we are going to continue with our Juno's content as well. Our quest for the perfect Canadian lyrics to meet the moment in national history and help us navigate these times. Often we do turn to music. So I hope you'll turn to us between 3 and 6 on the Coast.
Gotta love Canadian music. Gloria, thank you. And you can hear On the Coast on CBC Radio 1 in Metro Vancouver and anywhere on the CBC News app. As we know, the impact of the U.S.-Canada trade tariffs is taking a toll on all sorts of industries in BC. That includes craft breweries, who are feeling the pressure of the 25% U.S. tariffs applied last week on aluminum. And more tariffs are expected on April 2nd. Adam Henderson from the Vancouver Superflux Beer Company spoke with the CBC's Ian Hannah-Mansing last week on the challenges facing the industry.
You feel the price of your beer is as high as it possibly can be, that the consumers aren't going to tolerate more, and the cost of a can is probably going to jump quite a bit. What does that mean for your business?
Yeah, nothing great. It means we're making cuts in other areas, and there aren't that many. Rent's up, insurance is way up, gas is up. Interest is going down finally, so that part's good. That was the good news today. But yeah, so it's tough. It's hard to think about and figure out where we manage that. I suppose there's some angles where we have relief, and we could be looking at other markets like China
to get cans.
To get cans, but we literally just went through a massive issue with can supply towards like later COVID, where everything was in cans. Can sales were crazy. So then we went through all these measures to secure supply agreements, and many of us did that, and we found these supply channels that we could rely on. And a lot of that did mean, you know, our best friend to the south, right? And now that's definitely in jeopardy, I would say.
I'll bet you people watching right now are asking this question. The aluminum is from Canada. Your brewery is in Canada.
Right.
There's a tariff for exports to the United States.
Right.
So why isn't there a can maker in Canada that you can go to?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody's sitting on tens of millions of dollars that they could deploy very quickly to do that, now might be a good time. I don't know what it costs, but it's a lot.
How should small businesses in BC be supported amid these U.S. tariffs? And we're talking about craft brewers. How can they pivot? What can they do? Give us a call now, and some of you have. We're going to get to those calls now. 1-800-825-5950. 604-669-3733 is our number in Metro Vancouver. Pound 690 on your cell phone. And you can email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. Joining us in studio is Ken Beattie. He's the Executive Director of the BC Craft Brewers Guild. Ken, thanks for coming in. Much appreciated.
My pleasure. Thanks for having us.
What are you hearing from craft brewers like Bruce Henderson and others these days since that 25% aluminum tariff mark?
Oh, it's just chaos and unpredictability. And that's the challenge. We can't, we say that COVID might have prepared us for this, but COVID, at least you knew when things were closed, they were closed for a certain period of time. This changes hourly. And so the stress of that and the inability to plan, as Adam said, the inability to plan how much your cans are going to cost, what your price is going to cost, that's really causing a lot of stress.
Let's go to Gully in Vancouver. Gully, thanks for waiting on the line. What's your question?
Well, it's not really a question. It's just an endorsement of Vancouver and British Columbia microbreweries. I live in the brewery district, so-called Clark and Hastings. I have a painting studio there. And within a circle scribed of 8 or 10 blocks, there's 16 plus or minus very nice small tap rooms and breweries, all producing and promoting Canadian product and Canadian nationalism too. I'd say there's no flag waving, but there's a lot of pride in their product and the fact that they are brewing here in just about the nicest place in the world to live. And I've been drinking beer all over the world for, well, I'm 78, certainly for 65 of those years.
We won't do the math on that one, Gully. But Gully, can I ask you?
I had to phony up my birth certificate back then.
Gully, can I ask you quickly?
Sure.
What would happen if your favorite breweries had to raise their prices because of the tariffs? What would you do?
I'd pay it. Simple.
Would you?
I'd pay it. Yeah. Now, I might be forced to go back to the olden days when I was living herbal, gerbil, hippy-dippy off the grid. I might have to go back to brewing it myself. But that's hardly a fate worse than death.
Yeah.
Drinking that beer, I think, was the fate worse.
Yeah, depending on how you make it, it's a great fuel for boats and cars.
You have to be fastidious and cleanly about it, of course, and that's the bottom line. I would like to say to anybody listening, don't drink large breweries' products, Molson's and all the rest of them, without slagging one or the other individually. They're all hand in glove, and in some cases, indirect subsidiaries of American giants consortia anyway, and they brew rubbish. I mean, it's terrible beer as well.
Gully, we appreciate your call. We got a lot in there. Ken Beattie, you're chuckling a bit. That's a loyal drinker there.
Yeah, that's a loyal drinker, and that's what we find with British Columbia. That's why we have 220 independently owned and operated breweries in this province. It's fellas like and people like Gully that are supporting us. And the tasting rooms really become a community hub, and that's a piece of difference. That it's a meeting place now. It's reinvigorated that area, particularly in East Van. That's totally been a very cool area. Port Moody, North Vancouver, all these, we're in 80 communities around the province. And so when a brewery closes, we've lost 15. That's a real issue. So we really want to work worked with the government, and we expect and we hope that BC, British Columbians will, if we have to raise our prices, they'll pay a little bit extra to support the local community, because he makes a good point on foreign-owned domestic breweries. Yes, there are jobs in BC, but the head offices, 2 of the head offices are in the U.S., and one of the head offices is overseas. And that money, some of that money is leaving. Independently owned and operated craft breweries, the money stays here, the jobs are here.
Let's go to John in Vancouver. John, you have a question that I was wondering about when it comes to aluminum and glass bottles. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was in the liquor store yesterday buying beer. Often a beer is available both in glass and in aluminum cans. We know the aluminum cans is a challenge right now. Is it the same situation for glass bottles, or is a glass bottle a better choice as far as the economics go for the brewery?
Well, since COVID, so many of the breweries have gone into cans. Cans is the preferred package for a supplier, for the customer. About 80% or more of all the beer produced is in cans. It's actually the best container because it doesn't get struck by light. The temperature can be, it's easier to control temperature in it, and it's lighter to ship. So, you know, unfortunately, one of the largest, our suppliers for growlers and or for bottles was in Vernon, and it went out of business. It went bankrupt. So there isn't really a reaction that we can jump back to bottles, not quickly.
Does that answer your question, John?
Yeah, it does. Maybe just to follow up too.
Sure.
I assume it's better if I actually go to the brewery, buy from their counter versus going to a BC liquor store.
Well, supporting the local businesses would be excellent, and the selection is better at the brewery, and the beer is exceptionally fresh. So, yeah, I would recommend that. It really helps the people that are working in the tasting room in the breweries.
And John, may I ask you a question? If prices are raised, would you be able to manage?
Oh yeah, I'm fortunate, I guess, in that if the price of beer went up, it would be about an extra $2.50 for what I bought yesterday, and I could easily absorb that.
All right. John, we appreciate
I'm fortunate.
Yeah, indeed. John, we appreciate your call. Thanks very much. Let's go to Jim in Burns Lake. Jim, you're on. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, why are they getting cans from the States when there's a big supplier in China? Now, I was in the Yukon for a number of years, and the brewery up there started out small. They're getting all their cans from China.
All right.
And when they started, they were doing like filling 2 cans at a time. And now it's just a continuous line.
Yeah. Well, we also, Jim, appreciate your call. I'll get Ken. Is there another supplier out there?
There is another supplier, and it is China, and there is other markets. It's a longer commute. It costs more to get it here. You've got to be really careful with quality. It's not easy to get to China to check out the quality. It's easier to get down to the U.S. to check out the quality. But many of our members actually use cans from China for sure, and more so now.
Is there any discussion, though, with the tariffs that China is imposing on Canadian goods?
That's a good point, too. So you see what's happening in the seafood industry with China. So it can be as incredibly volatile as it's turned out to be with the U.S. So we're caught between a rock and a hard place. We really are.
Are you a craft beer drinker? Do you own or run a craft brewery? What are the tariffs doing to your business? How are you managing around this? Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950. Our number in Metro Vancouver is 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. We're speaking with Ken Beattie, Executive Director of the BC Craft Brewers Guild. You mentioned 15 breweries that have unfortunately gone under in BC. What were the main causes? Was that COVID? Is it the tariffs?
It's the costs. The costs are incredible. The tax that we pay, the rent that we pay, gas distribution costs, everything since COVID. We were supposed to have a boom after COVID. It has been a bust. Whether it be the road washing out and we can't get product to the interior, wildfires, you name it, we've had it. We had a liquor board strike. It just has been relentless. I've been in the beer industry since the 80s, and I've never seen anything like it. And so really, the quick fix for us is markup reduction on the markup schedule. We've got a proposal in front of the government. The way that the tiered system works, it's based on volume. It's too high on the low end and it's too low on the top end, if that's the easiest way to describe it. It would give instant relief to our members, and it would be anywhere between 23% reduction and a 75% reduction. And so we've asked and have that in front of the government now. We have some meetings scheduled for that. We're really hoping that the tariff legislation that's been proposed, that's when they go back into legislation, they pass, because that is the ability to do COVID-like changes very quickly, and that's what we need. That's our way out, because that would alleviate. We're talking for a small member $60,000 a year, for a large member over $1 million a year. But the way that we can structure it is it would stay revenue neutral, so it won't cost the government anything.
Remind us how it would stay revenue neutral.
It would stay revenue neutral because the world's largest breweries have not paid an increase in over 8 years the way the structure. They are far above the high end, and as they grow, they don't pay any extra incremental tax. When our biggest members, the ones that you see in the liquor store, in the cold zones and with displays, they pay each time they move up the continuum. And some of those have paid, they've gone up 7 different tiers. So they're paying, $2.4 million in tax. They would save almost $1 million. That money will go back into the business. That money will create jobs. That money will keep people doors opened, so we don't lose. We're a world-class, as the first caller said, we're a world-class beer destination through the BC Ale Trail. If you're wondering what beers to buy that are completely independently owned and operated, the bcaletrail.ca, shameless plug, is the one to go to. So that'll show you all the breweries that are in BC that are independently owned and operated, and all that money stays here.
What sort of reaction have you had from the province to your markup reform suggestion?
Yeah, I mean, we are, the struggle is is getting meetings, because there's so much going on. So I have a lot of empathy, but we now have the meetings in place. We feel that we have a very valuable plan that will save jobs, save the breweries in BC, and it can be done really quickly. So we've got a couple of meetings in the next couple of weeks, and with Minister Begg and with Minister Popham and the rest, we're putting something in front of the tariff tax committee. So we're hoping to hear something. We really, it's now urgent. It's because we talk a lot about cans. Hops just went up too. And we use an amazing amount of hops from the US, and they're going up 25%. And the thing about hops is we can't go to China for the hops, because the hops are proprietary brands that are only grown in the US. And so if you like Citra and Mosaic, which are the hazy beer hops, we're going to be paying more.
Is there any option, and we're going to get to Marla in just a moment. Thanks for waiting, Marla. Is there any option for growing any of this, more of this stuff in BC?
Well, ironically, back in the 40s, BC, the Fraser Valley was the Commonwealth's largest hop growing area. So there is small hop producers. Our members use them. They sell everything they make, but it's not enough land. It used to be so much land, and now it isn't. So there is a way, but you can't just throw the hop in and grow it really quickly, though they are literally a weed. They grow 20 feet tall really quickly. But there is a way, but nothing in the volume that we're doing, nothing to support the volume that we do. And the proprietary piece is really different.
When the legality gets in there, it does make it a lot more complicated, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Let's go to Marla in Vernon. Marla, you have a question. Go ahead.
Well, when I was a kid, I'm getting quite a bit older now. I used to work at the Lavington glass plant, and they shut that down. I guess you guys touched on why you don't use glass anymore for beer bottles or whatever, but in my mind, it's a renewable resource. It would create jobs. It's something that's better for the environment. You're not drinking out of aluminum cans and getting all kinds of residue. You're not dealing with tariffs. Other than maybe, what you have to pay for your sand and different things. And it would create a bunch of work for people. So here we are. You could have a bottle return. You would just do good for the environment, good do things for people's bodies. And, just make a difference. And we could do that all across Canada. There's big buildings vacant. And let's look at something like that instead of dealing with metal for, China and doing all of these things and all this transport problem, we're now changing our interprovincial borders. We could just transport back and forth as needed and create good things for Canada again.
Marla, appreciate your call. Thanks very much from Vernon. Ken Beattie, you have another question around glass versus aluminum.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. It's just that most of the consumer has totally changed their buying habits. And so most of the breweries who used to use, unless you're large, but even large breweries don't, the world's largest, they've taken out the bottling lines. So the bottling lines don't exist. And
the infrastructure's gone.
The infrastructure's gone in breweries. Most of it is canning lines. And if you had to, put back in bottling lines, lo and behold, they're made of metal and steel. So everything in a brewery is, we move past steel and aluminum all the time.
Interesting. Wes is joining us from Port Coquitlam. Wes, I understand you work in a craft brewery.
Yeah, I work at Tin House in Poco, and
great.
I've done pretty much every job that there is to do at the brewery. I helped build the brewery and then moved into the front of house and worked the counter. I've worked with the brewmaster brewing beer and worked on the canning line. And I really appreciate your guest kind of giving people a little bit of a look behind the veil on how this all works. You know, Molson moved from downtown Vancouver out to Chilliwack a few years ago. And part of that move for them was updating their facility so that it could be more automated.
Yeah.
So in the case of a large brewer, that, like he was talking about, that whose incremental taxes haven't gone up, they're actually using less people than they were a number of years ago because a lot of the system is automated. Whereas almost all of the craft breweries in BC, for all of the jobs that need to be done, there's a human involved in it. So not only are they not paying as much on the remittance side for the taxes for producing the beer, but they're also not creating as many jobs as they used to. And so, you know, the government supporting the craft brewers by changing the tax regime would also allow them to hire more people. And then those taxes are going back and money is being spent in our own communities. Yeah. So the craft breweries really produce way more jobs in the province than any of the large producers, and really important to keep that in mind when we're talking about how the tax regime impacts the businesses.
Wes, can I ask you quickly before we get to Ken, do you expect that you'll have to raise your prices?
Most definitely. I mean, all of the costs that have happened over the last number of years, and you know, all those inflationary costs that everybody else has been seeing have been borne by all of the businesses in BC as well. And, you know, so at a certain point, as your I'm not even going to call it profit margin, because for a lot of us, we're not even at the profit point. The margin is getting squished by those additional costs going up. And, you know, a 25% increase in an important thing like a can can't be, you know, eaten by the business. It's going to have to get passed along to the consumers. And then that makes it harder because now our product is even more premium as compared to the macro brewers. And so when people are, you know, penny pinching and they go into the liquor store and they're looking at a choice of a 6-pack of something that is able to be produced en masse versus a smaller product like ours, unfortunately, we're going to lose out. And, you know, that's not helpful, again, when the local businesses are pumping money into the local economy through a various number of ways. So, yeah.
All right, Wes, appreciate your call. Thanks very much. Ken, what do you think?
Yeah, great points, Wes. We employ about 5,500 people in the 220 plus breweries in the province. I don't know the estimate for that for the large breweries, but the point of the breweries are very technical and they do not have a lot of people on the floor like they used to, like a craft brewery. And so from that point of view, it's probably 5 times more, I bet, that we do in employment. And he's exactly right. So many people are working in the business, not on the business. The owners are pouring beers. The owners generally be the brewers. They used to have brewing teams and they worked on recipes. Now they're brewing. And that's an unfortunate situation. And the hospitality side of that is none of the major breweries have tasting rooms. we have massive tasting rooms with a whole bunch of front end staff. If the brewery closes, they have to go to the restaurants, and we know the situation with restaurants in small communities. 55% of our breweries are in rural areas, so they tend to, we're spoiled in Vancouver with so many breweries in neighborhoods, but in some places it's just one brewery.
Yeah. Let's go to Chris in Victoria. Thanks for waiting, Chris. Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on. I wanted to make a statement and then ask a question. The statement I wanted to make was that my family and I traveled from Victoria down to the tip of the Baja Peninsula in Mexico and back. I'm a big craft beer drinker and got to experience the craft beer scene, all the way through Washington, Oregon, California, and into Mexico. And nowhere compares to what we're doing in BC here. The quality, the variety, and just the premium level of the content of what we're getting here in BC is unbelievable. And so I just wanted to make that comment and say that, even if prices do end up going up, you better believe I'm going to keep paying for it because it's just that good.
Yeah.
The question that I had around that was, we have a sense of how much a can of craft beer, if you buy a single can of craft beer from the store, might be going up in price between now and, let's say, April 5th kind of thing.
Good question, Chris. Apologies. We're just coming up to almost end of show. I'll let Ken Beattie answer.
Yeah, it's difficult to say, Chris, because for the hop suppliers, for example, the local hop supplier, Hops Connect, which is Canada's biggest hop supplier, they've stockpiled. So their commitment to Canadian breweries is they're not going to charge any incremental money until they run out of those stocks. We really don't know with the cans because the cans is all over the map. So it's difficult. We can't predict. This is part of the stress that everyone's under, is this inability to predict and the chaotic nature of the president changing his mind overnight or during the day.
Or sometimes as we watch.
Yeah.
Ken Beattie, Executive Director of the BC Craft Brewers Guild. We really appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And that is our show for this week. Thank you for calling, emailing, and joining our discussion. You can always email us, bctoday@cbc.ca.